Welcome to From Slow to No, the latest in a series of videos about integrating BlazeMeter and Runscope together with the CA APM technologies to make continuous delivery and testing faster and easier than it ever was before. Let's get started. I'm going to do something special in this video. I'm going to do this as a tracking shot, just like in the movies. One long uncut scene to show you exactly how to log into Runscope, create a new test, integrate that test with CA APM, and then deep dive into the results of an actual test run. So I'll call my test Thieves by Runscope. It's a convention to add by Runscope. This makes it easier to identify the source of the transactions in APM. To actually set up a test, we have to pick some API calls. I've got a simple application here that does a series of GET requests. The first one results in a transaction that takes about 2 seconds. I'll add a second request. This one, like the first, except that I'll make it stall for 4 seconds. And the final request, I'll do something a little different. I can tell the application to have a transaction with an error so that we can see how that works. So I'll change this event parameter to error. So I've got 3 steps in my test case now. I'm going to save it. The APM integration involves going to the test settings, clicking on integrations. I've set it up once, but just to show you how easy it is, I'll throw away the original one I've got. Click to connect to CA APM Fresh. This is all you need to do. Go to your APM SaaS tenant, copy the URL out of your browser window, paste it into Runscope, enable APM traces. That's it. Don't forget to switch from off to on, save, and now we're ready for our first test. Let's go for it. Over on the left, you can see that the progress is now taking place for the test. I'm going to click to take a look at that progress. The first API call is back. The second one just returned. And the third one, as expected, took an error. So at this point, we could investigate the numbers and the information that's inside Runscope, but with the integration in place, we can actually just click this link to view the results in CA APM. You might have to log in if you aren't already, but you'll land at a page that actually shows you the flow through all the components of APM, the call path for each of those test steps, each of those APIs. So as I roll over the steps, you can see that call path, which ones use which backend. This is very powerful. You, without knowing any code, understand the runtime, either production or QA, path through all the components in your application. It gets more exciting though. If I click on one of these test steps, on the right I get a summarization of the metric data about the latency and errors and stalls in the transaction. In a heavy load test, you might see stall count or concurrency go up and know that you have a bottleneck there. On the lower left, I can look at the metric data inside of this contextual metric viewer. This is another place where you can look at a longer time frame, a slightly different view. And there's also a business transactions tab. Now this is the famous upside down wedding cake, but there's something special here. When you look at each of these test steps and walk through them, you can see, in this case, this is the error test step. You can see all the information here. I'm going to make this a little bigger so that it's easier to read. And we can walk down to the component that had the exception and look and see exactly which exception it was. So this tells us that the servlet exception wrapped a Java-Lang exception, which said technically not an error. That's my idea of humor. So we've drilled all the way down to the root of an error inside of a transaction just with a single click over to APM and then a click down into the business transactions information. But there's more to that. If we click on another one of the test steps, each of them has their own transaction data, but one of the special things is that we're correlating those transactions together in the view. So on the top, we have step 0, and then we see there was a pause before step 1 ran, and another pause between step 2 ran, and the width of those various segments represents the latency of the steps itself. So just like we did with the error, we can click on any of these steps and open it up to get a bigger and more detailed view of exactly where the latency was in the transaction. my custom code artist Hokusai creates a backend transaction that represents the 4 seconds of work in this particular step of the test. So there's all kinds of deep down dive information. If you want a summary of all your tests, you can get that in Runscope, of course, but you can also go to the experience view inside of APM. And here I've created a tile for all of my Runscope tests. So if I drill into the tile, I can see a summary, histogram, and other views of the latency and the transaction volume for each of the different tests that I'm running. So they'll automatically gather together here. There's nothing to set up to make them show. This is powerful because if you're running a bank of tests, you can look at their server-side performance and these various views here. And on the right, any kind of anomalies or problems that we detect with our assisted triage feature will be here for you to drill into. Thanks for watching this video on the CA Technologies Runscope and APM integration. It truly is easy. I may not be Robert Altman, but that was truly a tracking shot, no cuts, from building a test to running a test, integrating with APM, and drilling into the test results. It's easy. Come check it out. Thanks.